Top stories in our news today. Republican President Edgar Lungu has advised people in the country to embrace protective measures against the coronavirus. Former Defense Minister Kalombo Mwansa has died after collapsing at his home in Lusaka's State Lodge area. And now the news in detail. Republican President Edgar Lungu has advised people in the country to embrace protective measures against the coronavirus. President Lungu is encouraging citizens to follow up the guidance that is being given by health authorities. He notes that the coronavirus pandemic has so far affected 19 countries in Africa, and therefore there is need for the general citizenry to be on high alert. President Lungu was speaking during the disjunction ceremony of Reformed Church in Zambia. RCZ Kamara resident Minister Daniel Daka, who has been transferred to Luansha RCZ Center congregation. During the ceremony, President Lungu hailed the RCZ for having complemented government's efforts in the economic growth through offering quality education and provision of affordable health care. And President Edgar Lungu says the government will not rest until all the gassing perpetrators and those who were involved in the recent incidents of mob justice are brought to book. He has called on the church and other cooperating partners not to entirely leave the fight of bad vices in the country to law enforcement agencies alone. Meanwhile, President Edgar Lungu has urged the church to stay away from politics. The head of state states that the church must, however, continue providing counsel to the country's leadership. He said this in a speech read for him by Tourism and Arts Minister Ronald Chitotelam during the groundbreaking ceremony of the Charleston Seventh-day Adventist Church new building project. The president has pledged to contribute 100,000 kwacha and 1,000 pockets of cement to the construction of the new SDA church.
This approach is very favorable to us as a church in that we depend on contributions from people in the form of money and building materials. The guest of honor, sir, for each phase will be able to evaluate the material cost so that those with building materials can contribute them directly to the church. Our first phase, which will consist of a substructure, is estimated to cost us around 700,000 kwacha. Sir, as earlier alluded to, we intend.
And Church Development Chairperson Garich Pili says that the building of the new SDA church will cost approximately 700,000 kwacha, with constructions works expected to commence in April this year.
This approach is very favorable to us as a church in that we depend on contributions from people in the form of money and building materials. The guest of honor, sir, for each phase will be able to evaluate the material cost so that those with building materials can contribute them directly to the church. Our first phase, which will consist of a substructure, is estimated to cost us around 700,000 kwacha. Sir, as earlier alluded to, we intend to raise our funds through contributions from our church members as well as our cooperating partners. This approach is very favorable to us as a church in that we depend on contributions from people in the form of money and building materials. The guest of honor, sir, for each phase will be able to evaluate the material cost.
Former Defense Minister Kalombo Mwansa has died after collapsing at his home in Lusaka State Lodge area. The death of Professor Mwansa is reported to have been confirmed by his friend and workmate, Professor Patrick Kalufungwa. The funeral is being held at his residence, where several family members have gathered. Before his death, Professor Mwansa was Vice-Chancellor at Cavendish University. He also held various positions in the MMD government under the Levi Mwanawasa and Rupia Banda administrations. And Cavendish University has paid homage to its late Vice-Chancellor, whom it has described as an exceptional, hard-working and patriotic citizens. We extend our heartfelt condolences to the family of Professor Mwansa. Government has clarified the Constitution Amendment Bill number 10 of 2019 will be presented for second reading as it is despite Cabinet approving Parliamentary Committee recommendations. Government Parliamentary Chief Whip Brian Muntubile says that the Constitution Amendment Bill has to go through the normal legislative process of Parliament. Speaking at the weekly PF Interactive Forum in Lusaka, MMD Mr. Muntubile has, however, disclosed that the bill will be accompanied with a notice of amendment. Mr. Muntubile says that besides the notice of amendment, which will be circulated by the Minister of Justice, Bill 10 will also be brought at the floor of the House with a committee report. He states that if there will be any other amendments MPs want to make to the bill, this will also be moved on the floor of the House. Mr. Muntubile says that this means that the Bill 10 is being treated like any other bill that goes through the legislative process of Parliament.
In short, after it's been through committee speaks to it, witnesses speak to it. When it comes on the floor, you see notice of amendments going round. And by the time it becomes law, it's totally different from what it was at bill stage. So that's how it's going to be handled. So to answer your question, Bill 10 will be the way it is, but a committee report to accompany Bill 10, and also a notice of amendments. So if Parliament, if MPs by simple majority accept those notice of amendments, immediately Bill 10 has changed. It will now incorporate these other changes that would have been brought by the Justice Minister, together with other amendments, because MPs are free to also move other amendments besides the ones proposed by the Justice Minister.
And Mr. Muntubile has insisted that government remains confident that it will have 112 MPs supporting the enactment of the Constitution Amendment Bill. He says following the approval by Cabinet of the recommendations from the Parliamentary Select Committee that scrutinized Bill 10, all political parties are now on the same page. Mr. Muntubile says he will therefore be perturbed if there will be any lawmaker that will not support the current constitution refining process.
Because now, after the Justice Minister presented, what is expected of the Zambian people is to speak to the MPs. I know that the MPs that were speaking to this process were speaking for and on behalf of the people they represent. Now those people are saying, the chiefs are saying, we want to amend Bill 10. We want to support the amendments of Bill 10. The Christians are saying, please make sure that Bill 10 goes through. The youths, the women, the disabled, and everybody else. So from the 164 members of Parliament, we expect to garner the 112 that is required, because quite frankly, all the contentious issues have been resolved. It will be difficult for any MP to justify why they shouldn't support. I'll be perturbed, to learn from one MP saying, I'm not supporting the process, because what will be the reason? Like we said earlier, it's not politics as usual anymore. This is about duty, national duty, the highest level that is required of each one of us, especially the members of Parliament. So I'll be surprised to hear from an MP that would come up, because even if they don't agree with everything else, the responsibility lies on the floor. They have an opportunity to come and argue their case on the floor, to include that other amendment that may have been overlooked by Minister of Justice.
The Opposition United Party for National Development, UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema has implored the judiciary to reverse its decision to bar John Sangwa from standing in any court in Zambia. Mr. Hichilema says that the judiciary must understand that they are supposed to be the last pillar standing with which aggrieved citizens can run to for support when their rights are being trampled upon, as is the case with John Sangwa. He says that what the judiciary has done is an affront to civil liberties, not only against John Sangwa, but against millions of other Zambians who feel the need to rise up and question some of the decisions being made by the judicial system.
And so John Sangwa is speaking for millions of us. And that is no reason, absolutely no reason at all, that the judiciary can act in this manner without hearing John's case, without giving him the right to be heard. They act in such a draconian manner, which suggests that they've taken a position in favor of those who are in the executive, in favor of those that are destroying this country, yet the judiciary should stand for the people of Zambia. After all, the judiciary is the creation of the people of Zambia. The judiciary must withdraw that position of not allowing Sangwa to stand before any court in Zambia. Otherwise, they're relegating themselves to a side which is working against the people. I want to believe that the judiciary still has an opportunity to redeem itself by withdrawing that letter or that instruction they've sent that is denying John Sangwa his right, his constitutional right to earn income as a lawyer, his constitutional right to have an opinion over the Constitutional Court judgment, which was already rendered, by the way.
Lawyer Makebi Zulu has insisted a lot of Zambians have taken out of context the Constitutional Court ruling on President Edgar Lungu's eligibility to seek re-election. Mr. Zulu, who is also Eastern Province Minister, states that the judgment of the court on page 82 going through to page 83 is however very clear. He says in its ruling, the court made it very clear that if a consideration is going to be made on whether or not a person has held a presidential office, what ought to be looked at is whether it is a full term or not. Mr. Zulu has argued that this means that if it is not a full term, for purposes of the Republican Constitution, that person will not be deemed as having held office. He states that in the eyes of the Republican Constitution, a person who has not served a full Republican president or has not served as Republican president a full term, he is not considered to have served a term. Mr. Zulu explains that failure to uphold this position will render Article 106(3) inapplicable.
That was clear from the judgment of the court. It is for that reason that the court, when it came to a conclusion that he did not serve a full term, said we will not consider the other one. Because we've already said that in the eyes of the Constitution, if you're going to determine whether there were 2 terms or not, look at it whether there was the person held office twice, look at it whether or not the person held office. And there's been an argument to say, no, the Constitutional Court changed the question. They gave a different question altogether. All the Constitutional Court said is that let's depersonalize the questions, because this will be binding on every Zambian. It will be binding on every person.
Heavy rains have washed away a bridge of Mukanga River in Chief Munkonges area of Kasama district in Northern Province. Villagers in Lukwabila have bemoaned the difficulties that they are having to cross to the flooded river to access services and commodities. Zanis reports that Lukwabila village headman Felix Nkaka has appealed to authorities to quickly work on the washed away bridge. We now have a report from Zanis.
The heavy downpour experienced in Northern Province in the 2019-2020 rain season has left a trail of destruction, with the bridge on Mukanga River in Chief Munkonges area washed away due to excessive rains. The traditional leadership has appealed to government to construct a permanent bridge. For now, locals of Lukwabila village have to brave the strong current when crossing the flooded Mukanga River. For Zanis, I'm Lakson Makodza.
New Congress Party leader Peter Chanda has urged lawyer John Sangwa to retract his statement on President Edgar Lungu's eligibility to stand in 2021 because he is undermining the institution that delivered the judgment. Mr. Chanda says the only ones that are mandated to interpret the Constitution is the Constitutional Court and not an individual lawyer. He states that Mr. Sangwa should not assume the responsibility of being the most learned lawyer in the country.
I want to quote the words when the judgment was being delivered, and I will quote literally what the Constitutional Court Justice Chibomba stated. She said that, and I quote, "Before we consider this matter, we wish to observe that we have noted with grave concern that whilst this matter was ongoing, several individuals commenting in the manner that was calculated to either influence proceedings or bring individual judges of the court into disrepute. This court has generally exercised maximum tolerance in a bid to protect the right to free speech because of its nature as the court, as the people's court. However, free speech does not entail destroying the very institution that the people have created." I want to quote the words.
All People's Congress Party APC President has urged members of Parliament and Zambians to reject Constitutional Amendment Bill number 10 in its entirety, stating that it is a self-service piece of legislation that is designed to deprive the public of the much-needed resources. Ms. Samsoni is of the view that the bill, once passed, will completely take away resources from health, education and social services delivery to bankroll emoluments for politicians after the dissolution of Parliament. He has stressed that patriotism must override individual ambitions and wanton abuse of state resources.
Our members of Parliament should not fall for the sugar coating on the Bill 10. Nothing can be further from the truth that in the history of this country and in my life as a practitioner of politics, this is the worst criminal piece of legislation that this country has proposed, that a government has proposed. This bill, if it becomes law, it will deprive our hospitals, it will deprive education, it will deprive social services, because all the money will be channeled towards paying emoluments after the dissolution of Parliament. We all have an obligation to ensure that we reject this bill in its totality. I think it has been acted in bad faith. It's being pushed in bad faith. It is a self-serving piece of legislation at the expense of the overwhelming majority. Zambians must reject Bill 10.
Central Province Minister Sidney Mushanga has urged the media in the province to highlight more the issue of coronavirus and the interventions that are being put in place. Speaking when he handed over 50 blankets for 5 health facilities at Ngungu Mini Hospital, Mr. Mushanga lamented that the virus, scientifically known as COVID-19, has not spared the African continent. Mr. Mushanga says that this virus spread through contact and unhygienic conditions has affected thousands globally since the first case was recorded in Wuhan city of China in December last year. He says that the church in the province should therefore also dedicate a few minutes to talk about the coronavirus to raise awareness among the congregants. And Central Province Health Director Kennedy Kabuswe explains that the coronavirus makes breathing difficult in patients and affects the kidneys, which leads to death of the victims. Dr. Kabuswe is however consoled that the coronavirus is curable.
My colleagues from the media, they need to do more in highlighting how the virus is spread and the measures which should be put in place so that we avoid the further spread of the virus.
As you pray also that this outbreak of coronavirus should not penetrate the borders of what? Zambia. Zambia being a Christian nation, we are protected, and we are protected through you people, especially if you look to God through prayer. If you really want to greet each other. Or if not like that, if you really want to greet each other, you can just do this. But avoid also contact in terms of what? Skin. So avoid what? Handshakes. Ngabachita so na chibukisho na tsana chiposha yako babiri na ibukisha na wewe patoke na wewe mponya. Yangu vipi na vibarisha ni mkwai.
Pano pesonde. Na abantu abalwire na bachire mpendo kuchira 134,000 pano turelanda. But it will mecha kuchira of course abengi balepola kuri ubu bulwere but natulusa abantu abengi sana kuri ubu bwino bulwere. Ubu bulwere kulingana nga fafini balandire ba minister waba fe kwa kibulwere ubu bwino bwa kifinyo botukwata but kupusano bwa kutila umuntu ngakwata ubu bulwere wena bulalenga ko bati muchifuba kufunya ko kwata fira chifine chibumbiri na ukaba olekola kulambo kubukumfwa kulafiro kupema bwino kuri bulwere ngabafuma mukufiro kupema bwino bula kwata ukuikata na makidins elo ngabaikata makidins baonaula ili ngifire twala muku kumfwa.
The church is not just congregating on Saturdays and Sundays. The work of the church is feeding the hungry and providing drink to the thirsty. The work of the church is receiving strangers and clothing those without clothes. Children of the living God, let not this be the last work you are doing, but I urge you to do more works like this one and let other groups of Christians emulate your works.
Still in our local news, Lusaka Province Permanent Secretary Elias Kamanga has directed Rufunsa District Commissioner and the Town Council to play an oversight role in the utilization of financial resources in the district. Mr. Kamanga wants the DC and the Council to particularly play an oversight role on resource realization from the preservation of the forest and sale of carbon credits by community resource boards. Mr. Kamanga says the program being implemented by Bicarbon's partners, BCP, is intended to ensure that local people benefit from the preservation of natural resources through community projects. Zanis reports that Mr. Kamanga is of the view that government should ensure that all guidelines in the disbursement and utilization of the funds are followed. More in the following report.
Lusaka Province Permanent Secretary Elias Kamanga has held a meeting with Shikaveta and Impasha Community Resource Boards, CRBs in Rufunsa District. The two CRBs are working with Biocarbon Partners, BCP, and are benefiting from the preservation of the forest in part of the Luanga Corridor, a critical area of biodiversity. Through conservation fees and the sale of carbon credit, the CRBs are realizing monies for developmental projects in their areas.
We signed a memorandum of understanding with the BCP that out of the 83,000 hectares of land which we are protecting right now, we will be giving us 2 kwacha per hectare, of which if you calculate that 2 kwacha per hectare by 83,000, it will come to 166,100 kwacha.
From the sale of carbon credit for the first time, Mpasha will realize 5 million kwacha, while Shikaveta will realize 3.5 million kwacha.
Kuchoka pali 80,540 tinakwenda tafika pali 118. So pali 118 manje hapo ndiye manje inafika time manje ma carbon offset amene. So after manje afika ngani ya carbon offset inapeza kuti muri 118 yatuja washikaveta tizalandira ndama yokwanira 5 million.
The Permanent Secretary wants government to play an oversight role to ensure that resources realized from the sale of carbon credits benefit the local people.
You are talking about 3.5 million that will be in Mpasha Chiefdom. There will be 5 million in Shikaveta Chiefdom. I think the government, through the two offices that I've talked about, must ensure that these resources are prudently utilized so that this project does not fail, because the communities out there, should be the ultimate beneficiaries. Support to the CRBs, I think it's important, District Administrative Officer, to provide also oversight.
Esau Shawa, who is BCP Operations Manager, says the partnership is intended to respond to issues of climate change.
The forest here is joining with the forest of Shikaveta across the Great East Road, which is also joining with Wembe across the Ruangwa. Then from there, the community forest goes up to Chitungulu through Lower and Upper Lupande. But yeah, So all this area, it's a very critical area of biodiversity.
With such partnerships, the country, which is known to be leading in deforestation in Africa, can improve its management record of natural resources. Hlupekile Nkonika for Zanis in Rufunsa district.
A resident of Lusaka's Roadspark area has bemoaned the prolonged hours of load shedding in the area, which she says has affected her economically. Patricia Kirk says that the area is being load-shedded for 10 hours every day, which she says is too much because other areas in the same neighborhood are being load-shedded for fewer hours. She stresses that she can no longer keep food in the fridge for a long time because it always goes bad. She has since appealed to power utility company ZESCO to see what they can do for the people who live in Katopola Road because they are the ones that are mostly affected.
With the load shedding, I'm affected more because I need to buy, like my food, I need to buy every now and then. Maybe 2 days I have to go out to get something because I can't keep something in the deep freezer. It will be affected. 10 hours is too long to keep the freezer off. And then early hours, 6 o'clock, the lights go. So that affects my finance as well. You know, anywhere I go, I need to use a taxi. So I have to pay. So I need help from ZESCO. They have to help us. They have to look into it so that they can do something for Katopola Road. Now, with the load shedding, I'm affected more.
The National Pension Scheme Authority, NAPSA, has donated 12x3 wooden desks as part of its corporate social responsibility to the learners at Chisomo Streamside School in Chipata district of Eastern Province. The school, which was started by the community in 2000 and taken over by government in 2013 with a 590 pupil capacity, has had till now 50 desks to be shared among all learners in the school. A challenge which has been there ever since its inception and up to today. Details in the following report.
As part of its corporate social responsibility, the National Pension Scheme Authority NAPSA has donated 12x3 wooden desks worth 6,000 to Chisomo Streamside Primary School in Chipata district. The donation has come at the right time when pupils greatly needed them, as the school only had 50 desks shared against 590 pupils. This gesture has delighted the Ministry of Education.
Giving us a desk means a lot. We are at pains when we go around checking our schools to find that pupils are sitting on the floor. The fact that we can have a long eye and extend such a gift unto us, we want to say we are so much thankful as a school as well as a district education board. So what we have done is actually going to improve performance for our school.
NAPSA Area Manager Chansa Kalandanya, his institution's objective is to extend a helping hand to vulnerable communities.
Our objective is to lessen the suffering in the community by extending a helping hand to the less privileged in line with our CSR policy. As Chipata office, we identified Chisomo Streamside Primary School through Chisomo Community Program as the recipient of our support in commemoration of the World AIDS Day, as well as the observation of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence.
Chisomo Community Administration is pleased with the development.
We are happy that we have found a partner that have come on board to help us just to reach out to these young people for them to have a conducive environment where they can sit and write. And we know that that's one of the motivations for them.
This donation will boost the morale of the learners at this school, and it is hoped that other stakeholders can come on board to emulate NAPSA gesture of helping the needy, not only Chisomo Streamside School, but other institutions in their need of support. Zanisi reports in Chipata, Eastern Province.
That's all we had from our news desk. It's bye-bye for now and keep watching.